Hello! We have two stories today. Our first is a bit dated but received a small update by way of an edit not too long ago. Ever heard of those stories long ago when nuns ran the schools with iron fists and an even tighter grip on their line rulers? You step out of line and, well, nowadays, apparently they try to off you. This next teacher will make you nostalgic for those bruised palms and rosy bottoms. Story 1. This happened when I was in middle school. You know, back in the days of wired headphones, so about 2011 or something. I'm a 24-year-old male, and I've been a type 1 diabetic since I was about 4 years old. And I use a continuous glucose monitor and an insulin pump. I had an individualized education program, so all my teachers were told about it and that I would need my insulin pump in class. Also, that it might make noise and I might have to pull it out of my pocket and mess with it if I needed insulin. Or I might need to drink a juice pouch, and I was able to do so at my discretion. We had one teacher who was a complete jerk for no reason. She was notorious for making kids cry during presentations. She even told one girl who wanted to be a doctor to find a cure for cancer, because her little sister had childhood cancer, that she would need to actually be smart to do that while chuckling to herself. Let a kid dream, man. We were like 12 years old. As you can imagine, she was also at war with technology. And on a side note, these days I use my phone to check my glucose and give myself an insulin bolus. I can't imagine being a kid today and dealing with a teacher like that when the lines are blurred and your smartphone actually is a life-saving medical device. But anyway, if you're not familiar with insulin pumps, the kind I use has a little tube that connects the pump which has the insulin to my body, which needs the insulin. This teacher also liked to be weirdly obtuse about things. Instead of being like other teachers and simply saying something like, "No cell phones in class, put it on my desk," which would allow me to remind them that it's an insulin pump, and they'd usually say something like, "That's right, my bad." She would instead try and talk abstractly about what she wanted to happen while walking around the room. So this particular day, she kept alluding to students listening to music in class, that we should be careful what we do because she can see it. Also, that us kids think we're so sneaky, but the adults know what we're up to. I obviously wasn't listening to music, so I figured she'd seen someone with headphones in the room. And the next thing I know, she had snuck up behind me with scissors. It took me a good moment to realize what exactly had happened because I was that astonished. I was used to teachers thinking I had a cell phone, or getting upset about my pump beeping during exams. But no one had ever touched it before, much less cut my life-sustaining tube. I was actually sitting with my mouth agape, and she turned to me, now that she was at the front of the class again, and said something along the lines of, "Mr. Wonderly, care to share what tunes are more important than listening to class?" I'd at this point put together that she thought I was listening to music. She thought she cut my headphone wires. I replied, "Just the sound of my thoughts while I've still got any, since that was my insulin pump." She had to let me go to my locker to get my cell phone to call my mom to bring me a new infusion set. My parents insisted no cell phones until high school, but my mom was also scared with me being a type 1 diabetic and too dyslexic to remember a phone number. She wanted me to easily be able to call her, so she got me a $15 Walmart phone and put minutes on it. And now I feel old. Then I just waited in the front office for her. She worked from home and drove like a bat out of Hades. She was so angry. I don't ever want to see her that angry again in my life. It took 10 years off of me, and I wasn't even in trouble. The teacher had apologized to me, and all the teachers got some more disability accommodation training or something. Kinda anticlimactic end, but a friend thought it was entertaining and that I should share. Edit. I'm going to put some of my comments here so no one has to dig if you want more information. Yes, she knew I had a pump. I had an independent education program, and my teachers were given the information they needed to know about my diabetes. Even still, a lot of non-diabetics just don't get it, or they forget. It would happen a lot, and teachers would ask for my phone if they saw me messing with it under the desk. Really, I was going through a thing and embarrassed about being diabetic, so I would often try and hide it, so I get how they thought I had a phone. A simple reminder, "It's a pump," was enough for every other teacher. Yes, she did get really close to me. I was facing the front of the room to look at the projector screen and to take notes. She snuck up behind me from the back of the room where she was lecturing at us from and reached her arm down towards me with the scissors. I didn't notice her doing that. Kids used to keep their iPod or whatever in their pocket and then run their headphones up under their shirt. It sometimes left a little bit of the wire peeking out from their pocket to get to their shirt. That's where she cut the pump. It was down at my waist. In terms of her apology, it wasn't too bad. We had a meeting with her, the principal, assistant principal, and a lady from the special education office, plus me and my parents. She said she was sorry for her actions and that she shouldn't have treated me that way, and she hopes I don't grow up to expect people to act like that towards me. She forgot I had a pump, but I didn't feel like she was making an excuse. She was saying she should have been more mindful, and it was her fault, and that I did nothing wrong. She also said I was brave and calm in the face of adversity, stuff like that. And then she apologized to my mom and dad for frightening them and for any costs. She offered to pay for it, but they declined. They wanted all the teachers to get more education about kids with diabetes, and the school had like a nurse diabetes educator or someone come in to talk to the teachers. No, my parents didn't sue her or the school. No, she wasn't fired. Yes, I still had to be in her class. And yes, I did have extra supplies kept in the nurse's office. But I also just really wanted my mom in that moment because I was a kid. This was a tiny school and did a lot of backwards things. They mishandled my learning disability as well. One year, my teacher was surprised my dad had mild cerebral palsy and thought it must be so tough for me having to deal with that, and would talk to him like he was 5 during student-teacher conferences. He's an engineer. Edit 2. When my mom showed up, I was sitting in the office waiting for her. I think it took her like 15 minutes to get there post-phone call. She asked me if I was okay and checked out the damage that was done. I could tell she was mad, not with me, obviously. She walked straight up to the receptionist and just asked where the teacher was, and they phoned the classroom and had my teacher come to the office. The principal also came out. My mom ripped her a new one, but she didn't yell, though I honestly think that made it more terrifying that she was very collected. I don't remember word for word, but basically she said that removing my insulin pump was a violation of my independent education program. Not to mention that it is a medical device and an extension of my body, which is keeping me alive. Also, that the audacity to damage life-saving medical equipment was reckless and criminal. That type 1 diabetes is no joke and takes lives. She should count herself lucky she didn't damage the pump itself, and she let her know how expensive they are and everything they had to do to get me one. She's had years of practice having to argue to take food into places they don't let you take outside food, or in the airport that I can't take my pump through scanners, etc. She was very practiced at putting the fear of God into people, but in a way that they can't turn it on her and say she's being disruptive. Then she took me home for the rest of that day. In the comments, Valkyrie Sword asked, "How did the teacher react when you told them what they had cut? Did they have to pay to replace it?" OP replied, "She just stood there for a little while, then asked me if I had another one. The tubing is part of an infusion set. I did have some extra supplies in the nurse's office in case of issues or emergencies, since tubes can get caught on doors and ripped out, or from whatever else kids do, but honestly, I was a bit freaked out. I was about 12, and I asked to call my mom. They're like $10 a set. Then the tubing is dry and needs to have insulin run through it to fill it. So there's the cost of that. She didn't pay for anything." Alternate for Other said, "Even if you were listening to music, what gives her the right to cut the headphone wires? Sounds like she should not have been teaching." Haha, yeah, I'm fine, haha said, "Seriously? If she thought they were earbuds, she should have just asked OP about them and then confiscated them for the rest of class or something. Teachers don't just have the right to destroy property." Totally Not a Rocket said, "Ooh, you kept your cool much better than I would have now, and I'm 30. Says a lot about your character though, good on you." OP replied, "Honestly, I was dumbfounded and kind of an idiot kid who didn't truly understand the full gravity of the situation. So I wouldn't credit myself so much for being calm about it." This teacher is obviously Miss Trunchbull. Where's her chokey, I ask? It doesn't even sound like she was all that embarrassed. I mean, her apology was her admitting she was wrong and saying OP did nothing wrong. These things are very obvious to everyone else. Don't you think a sane person would have been mortified? And I mean mortified? Our second story hits up a different kind of nostalgia, one of welcoming the new neighbors with pies. Pie. And a basket of muffins you just baked to welcome them to the neighborhood. This lady, however, must have missed that Leave It to Beaver episode. She shows up with demands, decrees, and disdain, and will leave you struggling to figure out if she's that dumb, ridiculously entitled, or as nutty as a bag of squirrel poop. Story 2. Anyway, I'm a 31-year-old female and I live in a block of 6 units, apartments for non-Australians. A month ago, the unit above mine went up for sale and sold fairly quickly, and the new owner moved in less than a week ago. This morning, I got up and went to take rubbish out and found a note stuck to my door. I honestly thought it was a "I'm new to the building" kind of note, you know? Oh, I could not have been more wrong. Dear tenant, I recently bought your building and wish to introduce myself. My name is blah blah, not going to put her actual name, and I think you will find me a fair landlord. However, I do have rules. Everyone is to be in their units by 9 p.m. If you're going to be out past this, I suggest you find accommodation elsewhere. No pets allowed. If you have any, they must be relocated before I do an inspection, or I will call the ranger to remove them. This is the only warning. I will conduct an inspection once a month, and you will be present to answer any questions or face eviction. Failure to pay rent on time will result in your eviction. If we all follow these rules, I'm sure we will get along. Sincerely, blah blah. What the F did I just read? Fun fact about my building: we all own our own units. Nobody actually owns the whole building. I won't lie, I got to the number 2 and had a slight panic attack because I have cats. And there's no way I was giving them away before I remembered we bought our unit just before Christmas. We rented it from a friend prior, and when she told me she was thinking about selling it, we bought it. Didn't even have to move. So in some ways, it still feels like renting, but we actually own our unit. Now, I'm not great at confronting someone. I tend to shake a lot, but at that moment, I was quite angry, so I went upstairs and knocked on her door. You know that gut feeling you have? It was spot on. A door opened, and there stood a Karen. Her hair blonder than my own, her nails long and bright colored. She didn't look happy to see me there. I introduced myself and explained that I lived downstairs and that I wanted to talk to her about her note. She started to talk over top of me. She explained that her letter was basic rules and even a child could understand it, and if I didn't like her rules, I could hand in a letter to vacate. Wow, I would ask if people are really this up themselves, but I work in retail and could answer my own question. I told her that I actually own my unit. She hadn't bought it or the rest of the building, but only her own unit, and that she couldn't enforce anything in her note. She didn't like that at all. She started yelling at me, saying that yes, she had indeed bought the whole building, and that failure to comply with her rules would mean I would be evicted. I was just starting to think maybe I was wrong when another neighbor opened his door. He came out and asked what the issue was about, and could she stop screaming as he worked nights and was trying to sleep. I told him I was trying to explain that she hadn't bought the building, and she started yelling again. My neighbor told her to stop, and then said the best thing I had heard that day. "Are you stupid?" Her jaw dropped as he explained to her how wrong she was, and that he was in fact part of the strata committee. That's kind of like an HOA that oversees the building, and that she had no right to make rules for everyone. She gave us dirty looks before slamming the door. I thanked him, and he said in the entire time he lived there, he hadn't seen someone so entitled. In the comments, Corrosive Alkanos said, "I wonder what exactly made her think she owned the whole building in the first place. Is she so effing illiterate that she misunderstood the terms of sale as presented to her by the previous owner of her apartment unit?" Two plastic lobsters added, on top of which, some of her demands wouldn't even be legal if she did own the building. No landlord gets to set a curfew. Neither are they allowed to do monthly inspections in most parts of the world. In the US, most states set very specific conditions for inspections. Residents have the right to be present, but only a court order could require that. Heartless Angel said, "Part of me wonders if she tried this thinking she could make things to her liking and figured people would be too scared to question it." OP replied, "That's what I was thinking as well, but she can't control 5 other homeowners." Used Dad said, "This woman has to be certifiably insane to think she bought the whole building. Some of the things on that list were unreasonable, even from an actual landlord." OP replied, "I know, like the curfew? What the F is that? I finish work at 11 p.m. some nights." Roger Ram J added, "I guess you'll have to find somewhere else to live then." I really want to know what this Karen did when she shut the door. Did she call her realtor and say they had swindled her and misrepresented the sale? Because she didn't for 1 second question herself and or acknowledge that there was even a possibility she was in the wrong. And the realtor probably thought good riddance when the sale went through. Boy, were they wrong. Karens are like a stain you can't get out. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.